Hi, I'm Mark, poet with guitar, Washington, D.C. And tonight I'm with my other poets. And together with yourself looking at it, we're going to look at a new poem we've never seen, and we're going to react to it. And we hope you'll all join us and react to this poem as well. Marissa.
Hello, my beautiful poet friends and everyone watching. I am Marissa. I'm a poet and spoken word artist from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Don't forget to ask questions and put your comments in the chat. We love, love, love when you interact with us. We'd love to get your questions live. Lawin.
Hi, thanks, Marissa. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Poets Reacts on our first live recorded session. Okay, if you haven't done so yet, you want to do the subscribe thing on YouTube and like us on every other asset that we have. We're trying a few new things today as well, but before that, Kamlin.
Hi, everyone. I'm your Singapore, Arizona connection. I'm a spoken word artist as well as a visual artist living in Arizona. And without further ado, send in the poem.
There will be no poem to send in, but I will be reading through it this day.
Right. Okay.
Oh, yes. Read away.
I have seen a face with 1,000 countenances and a face that was but a single countenance, as if held in a mold. I have seen a face whose sheen I could look through to the ugliness beneath, and a face whose sheen I had to lift to see how beautiful it was. I have seen an old face much lined with nothing, and a smooth face in which all things were graven. I know faces, because I look through the fabric my own eye weaves, and behold the reality beneath.
Oh. Wow. Well,
right? The dogs know what's up.
Oh, read it very well. It's certainly a strong poem of images. I don't know if it has a title, but I mean, the most obvious one, of course, is to name it, Faces. Where I don't see a lot of poets like struggle with all kinds of abstract titles. You look at a painting, it's very often just a title, which just is what the painting is. You don't need. I think this poem doesn't need any crazy kind of a title. But the thing that was interesting to me most was how the poem. If I close my eyes and listen to the poem, I'm not seeing it the way it was written on the page. With all those enjambments all over, I didn't understand the line work, what made the line have the line have integrity. The whole poem had tremendous integrity. It sounded great, but looking at the craft of how it was written, I'm not sure I get that. But that didn't interfere with my enjoyment of the poem, though. It's just a question of craft, which we could discuss in some way.
So, like, if you got pleasure, what are you saying that there has to be a means to the pleasure? I really don't think that the means has to justify the end here. I think if you get pleasure from the poem, I don't know if it has to look good on the page. I mean, certainly Lawin read it the way it was on the page.
No, he didn't pause. He didn't put after each line. When we're dealing in blank verse, you can also give a slight pause at the end of the line to give the line integrity, to give the line meaning. But you can't do that with this one because it just needed the flow. It was like written in like prose.
Well, he breathed, right? He put pauses in, maybe not intentional ones.
Now, one thing I have picked up with all the spoken word over the pandemic is that how the line scans isn't necessarily how you read it, because there's this whole internal rhythm to things, which I think page poets will want to take a look at in terms of how they lay out their words. So I feel you, Mark, when you say that visually it doesn't seem to fall into place. But as I was reading through it, I could hear also how it made sense. So I think that's what you guys were feeling. But I want to go into the space called, it's a very universal and very human insight. The thing about faces and what you see and don't see, and how an aged face can still be empty, and even a young one can feel, it can surprisingly be so etched with life. And I think that's what draws us to this. More than the architecture, it's 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 the weaving of it.
I think
So
you were
there.
so excited to get to like the next line. You just kept flowing with it. And I would call this poem mascara, because mascara is a mask. It's the Spanish word for mask. I wouldn't call it faces necessarily, because it's definitely what lies beneath. I find everyone wears a mask. Everyone has different facets of themselves. Certainly, this poet was at least alluding to the conscious awareness. Wait, hang on. I gotta put
The Lawan glasses.
this poet was alluding to the conscious awareness of the mascara, right? Of the fact that they wore a mask, because everyone wears masks at some point or another. Okay, there's my Lawan. But I definitely, I would not be surprised if this was a woman who wrote this poem, to be aware of that.
Ooh.
The finality and almost the suavemente, like the very mysterious fabric over the eyes, the shade almost of saying, look what's underneath, the longing almost to be found or seen. I loved it. Could it be tweaked on the page? Absolutely. Should you read it with a pause at the end of every sentence? Yes, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to put a pause at the end. But sometimes you can change how it's read by changing, yes, how it is on the page. And sometimes you can just read it the way Lawan does, because he's just instinctually a tremendous poet. And Lawan, you should read more of these. I love your voice, and I'm just like, yes, do it, Lawan.
So, Marissa, can I jump in?
Yeah.
So this is my painted response, visual response for the day. It's for the most part, it's a continuous contour. So I was inspired by the poem with the weaving of the fabric, and I tried to weave the lines in and out, and what is hidden beneath. And it's beneath each face, there's a little bit of God or the Madonna in there. And that there's whether it's age or beauty, that I was inspired to think about, the hiddenness of each one of our faces. What is beautiful, what is holy, what is sacred and sanctum for sanctus for each one of us. I found this poem with the imagery of creation. With I'm a fabric artist sometimes, and the act of weaving and pulling line in thread, it's very maternal, and it's very beautiful. And I thought, as compared to some of the other poems that we have read, sometimes they lacked imagery and symbolism. I found that this poem was rich with that, and it helped me as the viewer feel invited into bringing in my thoughts and my background and experience into this.
It actually felt comforting as far as a piece goes, is in the sense that we've had some pretty postmodern stuff on the show, which were more ramble than anything. And even though this disguises as prose in a certain way, it's still definitely poetry with the imagery and stuff. So I find it comforting. And since part of the game for today is trying to figure out the title, right? Let me start with the wrong title, because I'm pretty sure it's not going to be right. But the postmodern way of entitling this would be something like Microscope. You know, some bullshit like that.
It would be like PPE, right? Your PPE, personal protective equipment, right? Because you don't want to get too close and it's all buried underneath.
To me, the poem was poetic prose, and that's what it felt like to me, which is a form that works, obviously. I mean, I like the way you read it very much, but I don't think the poem had all that much depth. It was a good images poem, and I think it was successful. But I mean, on the surface, we can all write a poem about, if you were to go into a room and have a prompt, okay, everybody write a poem about faces, right?
Mark, are you a naturally curious person?
Yes.
Curious? Aren't you the least bit curious of what's underneath that fabric?
No, I
don't see that. I didn't hear that here in the poem. I mean, he was really talking about not what hides behind the face. I mean, the face we're looking at it. They have. I mean, to me, it's the reality beneath. Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but for me, the poem was not all that. It didn't dig. To me,
are you calling it generic, Mark?
Yeah.
No, he's not calling it generic. He's just calling it not good enough. But wait, is it because of the length? Like, if it would have been longer and it would have given you a few more stanzas, would that have made a difference?
Yeah, if he took it a little bit further for me, yeah. What do you think?
Okay.
Let me throw in on that one. I actually have to join Mark on this one with the whole idea of it's valid. It's a valid insight. But I think it was made at a time where it was still fresh as an insight that there are many faces behind and beneath faces. Today, for us, it's a little more normal. I mean, for example, the best line about faces I've ever heard, and it was an opening line to a book, is, "The day I met him, he wore the face of a Christ crucified 17 times." That's a face. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a face.
That's a face only a mother could love. Yes.
Yeah, but see that for me, in one line, that tells me more about faces than this whole piece. Not to take anything away from what this.
I'm going to argue the other point, okay, Lawen?
Sure.
I see this as a almost minimalistic piece of art, which invites the viewer to ingest their imagination. And I think that's a valid way to approach poetry, to keep it vague enough to invite more of the audience's imagination. Just as an argument.
Sure.
You do have to be creative, and you do have to have an imagination to read, write, and interpret poetry.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess there are some times when I do look at a poem like that, which written in so loosely in terms of form, and yet so tightly in terms of context, that I, somehow the craft side of me goes towards that. Towards why write it in such a way as to not use the benefits of the craft. The line has meter, the line has sound. I mean, the poem has sound, but it forces us to read it.
Not everybody knows what you know, though. Okay, and things have evolved since the beginning of time when it was black and white television. Mark, I mean, come on.
Of course, the whole subject of poetry and prose has just become overwhelming. I mean, we each one has our own. You need to have your own aesthetic about it, for sure. Each one of us needs our own aesthetic as to where poetry and prose separate and become their own thing. That I agree. And everybody out there also, it's something really important to think about in the poetry of our age. Absolutely.
Well, I think if we're getting overwhelmed with poetry and prose, that's a very good sign. That means people are actually reading and writing poetry and prose, and we love that. So please overwhelm us by giving us all your comments and all your questions, and give Mark as much hell as you want, please. We love it. We're down for whatever your questions and comments are. Please definitely like, share, subscribe our channel, because we're coming down to the end of our program today. And I'm so excited to be here with my esteemed colleagues and all of their steamy opinions. We love them so much. Don't forget tomorrow's Poets Lighthouse right here at Poetry Global Network. We're very excited for all of our sister channels, 3 a.m. London time. And remember, as we react to poems, we hope you take action with your pen so that someday we might be reading your poem. Have a great night, everybody.
And this poem, it was Faces by Khalil Gibran.
Oh, wow.
Ah, thank
There
you,
you go.
Kevin.
Congratulations,
I was
Mark.
wondering about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but knowing that, all right, knowing that, then it is very Gibran, isn't it? I mean, it's there's a datedness to it. There's a 70s
Yes.
vibe to the whole
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
Did you say
And-
naked? You said naked.
Dated,
didn't you?
dated.
Ah.
Naked, watch this. No.
Wait. I was like, I gotta put my Cadillac, my Lowry glasses back on so I can. What did he tell you?
Yeah, it's Cabran. Like Cabran is great, you know. But he's surface level, but he hits home. He's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, even a
Anyway.
poem written at that time hits home today, and you know, that's the magic of and beauty of poetry and art.
You bet. Yeah.
All right. Good night, everybody. We love you.
Thank
Mwah.
you.